Hi, I'm Cara Sofoko. Each week, I talk about the stories in the news that are overreported and the ones that are going completely under the radar and not being talked about enough. This is Over the Top, Under the Radar. This week's guest is Labour MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill, Belle Ribeiro-Addy. Belle is what feels like an endangered species, a left-wing Labour MP. She was first elected in 2019, and before that she was Diane Abbott's Chief of Staff for several years. You might remember her from our Christmas special last year. Hi, Belle. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, great to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. It's been an interesting few weeks.
Yeah, like we're just at the end of party conference season, which I'm sure we'll get into. But the reason I wanted you to come on the show this week is because voting has just opened for Labour's new deputy leader, and you were the first to announce your candidacy, but you fell short of the 80 MPs to get on the ballot. I wanted to just sort of talk a little bit about why you decided to stand and, the process for this contest, which feels like it's been a bit sketchy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with you on that. Well, we'll start with why I decided to stand. I'm a member of the Socialist Campaign Group. And at the moment, I think a lot of people that would tend to lean towards that side of the party are feeling a bit lost and feeling like, I don't know, there isn't a home for them in the Labour Party. And I wanted to show them that there very much is. I also wanted to prove those of us in the party towards the left with progressive views are actually a very important constituency. And whilst I wasn't able to get the nominations, I hope at the very least I proved that, because, since I've come out of the race, we've seen some very interesting rhetoric. Well, not interesting, good rhetoric. It kind of sounds like what I was trying to say, that we shouldn't reform and that we need to lift the 2-child benefit cap, things like this. And actually, if we look at the past leadership and deputy leadership contests, what people have to say in order to get themselves elected to the Labour Party proves that the people that are the members of the Labour Party that vote want to hear these things, and that the left is very much alive there.
Yeah, and there's so many things I want to get into with that. I guess where I want to start is the decision to run and the weird process has been this year. So in 2021, they changed the rules for the deputy leadership contest.
Yes.
And
for all leadership contests.
For all leadership contests. And basically what we saw with this competition was there were 2 days for MP nominations for the Parliamentary Labour Party to nominate. And you had to get, I think it was 10% of the PLP, or was it 20%?
20%.
20%. You had to get 80 MPs and you used to have to get half of that number. So it just meant that previously the bar was a bit lower to get on the ballot paper. And I mean, I got an email. I'm a Labour Party member, as regular listeners know. I got an email. We've got it's from the 8th of October to the 23rd just to vote. But it was like a tiny, tiny period for people to be nominated. Is that just about keeping left-wing candidates off the ballot, just like keeping it to a smaller race?
In order to explain this properly, I have to take you on a journey back to 2010. Back to 2010 when Diane Abbott stood for the leadership of the Labour Party. Diane, because of who she was and because the leadership contest was looking to be pale, male and stale, she made a very good case that she should at least be on the ballot. And everybody got behind this idea. And so the few nominations that she was shy of to get on the ballot, she got. And she got on the ballot and had the contest. And I think everybody felt better that the contest didn't look so bad. So fast forward again to 2015. And obviously there wasn't necessarily a black woman that was going to come on to this leadership contest. But we had somebody on the left, Jeremy Corbyn. And it was that idea again, we don't want the members to be angry. We want to show them that there's a breadth of candidates. So people ensured that Jeremy Corbyn was on the ballot. What then happened? He wins the leadership and everybody's thinking, well, not everybody, those that would have preferred he didn't, probably thinking, oh my gosh. Now, when I stood, I remember remarking to a colleague of mine who's definitely more to right, but I get on well with quite a lot of them actually. And I said, look, I know I probably wouldn't be your choice politics-wise, but why not, just let me get on the ballot? And he said, we're not going to do that again.
He actually said it?
He actually said it.
Wow, they're saying the quiet bit out loud. Oh, gosh. yeah, I guess this matches with something that's been my experience of being a Labour member, that like the actual grassroots paying members of the Labour Party are on the left, and they're on the left normally of the leadership. So it sounds like what has happened is that pre-Corbyn, everyone was happy for the left to be part of the conversation, but now that it's been shown that the left could win, there's just open hostility to you being allowed to have a platform. Like, is that your experience?
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's the case, and that's a huge worry, because if you're meant to be a democratic party.
It's really hard to hear that, because it's like the left are allowed as long as they can't have any power. And I think for me especially, it feels like at a time when really clear socialist politics would be really popular. Like, you wrote a great piece for The Guardian setting out your stall as deputy leader, like, you know, what you would do. And I encourage people to read it. We'll link to it in the show notes. And, you know, it was really clear. It was like a strong position on Gaza, clearly anti-cuts and pro-investment in the public sector, anti just jacking up military spending for no reason other than Donald Trump wants it, and really clearly like not trying to reform. And I read it, you know, knowing that it was, you know, you got a trade union nomination, knowing you had 24 MPs, but knowing it was unlikely you were going to make the ballot. But it just felt how stark it was. That it was so rare that we'd hear something just as clear as that, and that really appeals to people on the left from a Labour politician. Like,
but the thing is, it's not rare in the Labour Party, and I suppose that's the main thing I was trying to get across. That, and one thing the deputy leader is meant to do is directly elected by the members. The deputy leader isn't automatically the deputy prime minister. They are essentially a membership person. They are meant to be, elected by the members, accountable to the members, and actually meant to be a champion for the members. And if we listen to the membership on all of these things, we would have been in a much different position. So my main thing is, I want to make sure that we listen to the membership, because actually the Labour Party membership is good. They're good about these things. They get it right. I mean, even if we go right back to the Iraq War, if we listened to the Labour membership on the Iraq War, we would have got that right. There are so many things that would have been different, and that was, other than the purely progressive politics. The thing I was trying to get across, our members know best.
So we had loads of questions. Lots of people had things they wanted to ask you, and we said you were coming on the show. So I'm going to ask the first one from Fred. He said, genuine question, although yes, with some snark. What is the difference between the two deputy leadership candidates? And I have to say, I was going to ask you that anyway. Like, my heart sank when it led to the final tweet. I can't tell the difference. And I know one of them, like, which one's supposed to be more left wing? Like, is there a difference for those of us who have ballots in our inboxes? Like, what's the difference between Bridget Phillipson and Lucy Powell?
The week before the deputy leadership contest was called, I would have said I wouldn't know either. They were both members of the government, and so they both did exactly the same thing in terms of how they voted. Both very nice women, you know, wonderful, but they both did exactly the same thing in terms of how they voted and the things that they had challenged. Fast forward, deputy leader at the time, Angela Rayner, resigns. There's a reshuffle, and one gets shuffled out.
Lucy Powell, right?
Lucy Powell gets shuffled out.
Right, yeah.
And then, obviously, the deputy leadership contest is announced, and Lucy Powell, who has been shuffled out, Bridget Phillipson, who hasn't, who is still in a government position, they become the two front runners. And I think in some ways, because people aren't happy necessarily with how things are going, Lucy Powell essentially ends up being a protest vote. At the moment, in terms of what they're saying, it's very similar. It still remains similar. It's been pulled slightly to the left, which I like, in that, as said, people are even using the exact phrase, we shouldn't be out reforming reform, which is really interesting, because obviously I was saying that, but little do they know that I got that from Diane Abbott. So whoever says that is quoting Diane. So one is seen as the leadership candidate and one is seen as not the leadership candidate. There are no other people in the race.
Okay, so we've got the situation where Lucy Powell is sort of the left candidate, but not necessarily because she's lefty, just because she's not a government minister.
Yeah, I mean, and from what, again, she's saying and the support that she's attracting, she is the de facto left candidate. And that is, I think, mainly because she's not actually in the government.
I'm going to be honest, it's one of the least exciting elections that I will have voted in the Labour Party, and there are a lot of elections in the Labour Party. For me, it was another moment when you didn't make it on the ballot of just feeling a bit like, what am I doing? Like, why am I still a member of this party? And I guess one of the reasons is one you've touched on, which is that the actual membership of the Labour Party, the grassroots, people who come to meetings, people who pay their monthly dues are on the left. And I mean, even the choice to vote for Keir Starmer, like when he stood to be Labour leader, he stood on I'm going to support Jeremy Corbyn's last manifesto. I'm going to unite the party. He didn't stand as like a right-wing candidate. But I mean, we had a lot of questions about Labour, unsurprisingly. And one of them was from a supporter called Kate, who said, how would you pitch rejoining Labour to those of us who left after decades of membership? And I guess I wanted to put that to you because I have a tendency to get a bit down with everything going on politically. Like, what keeps you Labour, and why were you sort of proudly standing as a left Labour MP?
And I think it's easy to get down about these things. That's probably another reason why I stood myself. I had to prove to myself, and thankful to the membership for doing that we were still very much here with all of the people that have left and the people that have been thrown out. Essentially, it's hard to believe that we are, but the response from the membership, I think, really proved that. And ultimately, we were built on some solid foundations, on some solid principles as socialists. And no matter who the leadership of the party has been, it has always been there. And it means something. And I don't think it's right to abandon it yet. There is still very much hope there.
We'll get more into that. I have one question on a slightly different note, though. Just the logistics of when you are standing for something in Labour and you have to get all these MP nominations, like, how do you do it? Is it like going around the tea rooms, like going around Parliament, like finding someone? Are you like sliding into WhatsApp groups? Like, how do you get, like, what actually happens? And presumably because you worked for Diane, you've done it for her as well. Like, how does it work?
It's so funny because obviously, as a Socialist Campaign Group, we take a decision as to who is going to stand. And when the deputy leadership contest was announced, I sent a message to one of my MP mates and said, oh my gosh, we're going to have a lot of coffees in the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of invitations for coffees, a lot of messages, a lot of other people. Coffee. Yeah, a lot of people lobbying you on behalf of somebody else. And to be fair, that happened for me as well. Go on, people asking on my behalf because, there's hundreds of us to get through. And then there's meetings, there's mini hustings of all the little groups. Well, obviously with the Socialist Campaign Group, we have a meeting, but some of the other groups, maybe the Labour Northern group might have a little hustings, or the rural group might have a little hustings, and get people to answer questions and decide whether or not. The problem is, whole process was done in 3 days.
I was going to say, how did you do that between the 9th and the 11th of September?
It was near impossible. So a lot of my pitching was actually done to the media, which in the hustings, which was a private hustings, some people were being snarky about. The reality of the situation is, as far as I'm concerned, I wasn't saying anything wrong. And this idea that loyalty is blind obedience, I think, is absolutely wrong. We have always been a broad church, and I feel that as long as you're not disrespectful to individuals, which I never am, I like all my colleagues, all of those that ran against me, even the slightly snarky ones. But I had a difference in opinion on policy, and that is key. Policies mean things. They have a direct effect on the people that we are elected to represent. So absolutely, if we're going to talk about them, we should, and we should be able to talk about them in any forum we would like.
Have you felt that there is more of a hostility to openly left MPs like yourself? And do you, like with this new PLP?
They've had the whip withdrawn. I'm not sure what else we would.
Yeah, and I mean, what does that feel like? Because it's like we had Zara Sultana on the podcast last year when she was suspended but hadn't left. Like, I mean, as for Diane, one of our first shows on the podcast was talking about how she's been mistreated. It does, like, that you seem to have a really positive attitude about it, but like it must make you feel a little bit like anxious to just say what you believe.
It does, and there is that anxiety there. But as I said, I mean, if we're not here to represent people, then really what's the point? And that includes our members back in our constituency, but the constituents themselves as a whole. And we know what they think about these issues. Think about the welfare cuts. We know what people thought about it. Why were we doing it?
You worked in politics, you were Diane's chief of staff. You told us last time you were on, you're in the office next to her now. And I think...
Well, I'm in her office right now, but better lighting.
I'm going to say hi. Always welcome. I love that Auntie Diane has the good lighting. I often sort of cite you as an example of something I don't think we see a lot in politics of, you work for Diane. I remember like a young woman I knew from Hackney, because I live in Diane's constituency, got to work in Diane's office, and she said there's just so many amazing Black women there, and like there's Belle, and it really feels like such a testament to Diane that there's someone like you, a Black left-wing Labour MP, who's like coming up. I'm sure we all want Diane to be in Parliament forever, but like coming up as she's coming to the end of her career. And it's such a rare, I think especially with men, you often see political leaders that are just kind of all about them and they're not thinking about their legacy. So on one level, it's just must have been so brilliant. You won your home seat 2019, you're representing the area you came from, the area I also grew up in. And then also it's when Labour's having this big defeat and when the left in Labour's having a big defeat. Like, what's that been like to sort of be kind of coming up whilst all this turmoil's happening, so much division in the party?
And I keep asking Diane, obviously, because she's a great reference to the past. I'm like, has it been like this before? Like very wide-eyed, is this what happens? And sometimes she's like, oh yeah. But more recently, she's like, nah, not seen this one before. No, this one's unbelievable. The turmoil has been unreal. And actually, like I said, I feel sad for just people. We're meant to try and help restore some faith in politics, but I feel like over the past few years, and not even just nationally, globally, we are losing people. And if we're losing people, ultimately, what is the point? We're meant to represent, we're meant to govern. And at the moment, I feel like there's such a lot, I don't know, people feeling a lot of hostility towards politics and politicians. And you can almost see why they feel that way. But it's hard to be on the receiving end of some people's anger.
Yeah, and I want to talk a bit more about that and kind of zoom out from Labour and talk about what's happening in the country. But I'm sort of glad you said that. It's funny, it's like just over a year since we had this big Labour landslide. And, I was like in a pub with friends who were cheering every Tory defeat. And it feels like there's sort of, we're similar age, we're age mates. It feels like there isn't, so we were both quite young when New Labour won.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like, so I'm not going to pretend I was like a political commentator, but it definitely feels like there's been less of a honeymoon for Labour. And
no honeymoon. Like, a couple of weeks in when they started going for us, I was like, whoa.
And I think the hard thing, I really want to talk to you about this, because I think the hard thing, I think, as someone who's still a Labour Party member and who's on the left of the party, or I don't know, where I'm on in the party seems to change, not because my views change, but because everyone else seems to move to the right. Well,
your politics haven't changed.
My politics haven't changed. I seem to be, moving from soft left, hard left, who knows what I am. But it's kind of hard, there's been a lot of missteps with this government. My personal view is that there hasn't been a strong kind of storytelling, not a strong sense of what it stands for. But it feels like the leadership is most coordinated and most effective when it's attacking the left within the party. And we hear a lot less about
insane
the good stuff that's been achieved. It just feels mad.
It's not okay. And the thing is, we have done good stuff. That's the worst thing. We have done good stuff, and it's been so hard to get it out there because of a lot of hostility from the media. And for two reasons. One of them, we talk about Reform far too much. Reform have 5 MPs. That's as many MPs as the Green have. Because we talk about them more, the media talk about them more. Because the media talk about them more, we talk about them more. They're talked about more. It's just ridiculous. And even when I go on political panel shows, I'm finding myself more likely to be sat next to someone from the Reform Party than the Green Party. That doesn't make sense. And somebody really needs to look into it. Because if we were in an election at the moment, most broadcast channels would be in trouble for giving too much platform to this particular party in conjunction to their proportion in Parliament. It's not right that they are dominating politics in this way.
Reform are polling very well, and they do have a handful of seats in Parliament, and they have done well in elections. But you're right, the attention that Nigel Farage and reform candidates get, it almost feels like we're manifesting them getting into power because we just talk about it so much.
And we talk about it all the time. We are 4 years away from election. Are we really meant to be basing political coverage on polls 4 years away from an election? That makes no sense. And there has to be something, in a rule book somewhere. It might be a dusty rule book. I don't care. Someone just needs to find it. It's not right that we are giving them the amount of publicity that you usually have to pay some big PR firm for. It's too much.
The amount of airtime reform got at other parties' conferences was crazy. Like Ed Davies, everything seemed to be about Farage. Keir, everything seemed to be about Farage, even though half the time he's aping his rhetoric, then suddenly he's this terrible racist.
Well, that's it. We're not countering the narrative enough because it seems like the narrative is popular. We're going along with it, which makes no sense. And again, going back to the reference of me walking into this office and asking Diane wide-eyed, is this what it was like before? I asked about the last time we were in government and Blair, and obviously, as you can imagine, neither of us are the biggest fans of Blair, but she said, I said, so what was different? And she said, yes, obviously there were extremely right-wing things that were going on, and we didn't always go along with it, but we did those core things, and we did them very loudly, the things that people expected in terms of Labour, Sure Start, council homes, all of these different things that were very tangible. And the thing is, it's not that we're not doing any of that now. There's just less of it and less noise about it. And so, and what Reform want, or what Reform seem to be doing, is dominating the narrative, and we are following on behind them. We are no good at it, and that's what we keep saying. We can't out-reform reform because we're bad. We're bad at being bad. We've never been good at going down this line. We're not good at really anti-migrant policies. We always flop on them. You know why? Because it doesn't come naturally to us. Because we're socialists. We just can't do it properly.
That's quite a nice, light-hearted way of putting something that can be a bit sinister. Of it's just not credible, right? If you really care about immigration and you really don't want people coming into this country, Labour's not going to be your pick for that. That's not. If you care about the NHS, Labour's your pick. We literally invented it. We care about it a lot. It's built into the party's DNA. But yeah, I think that is aside from the fact I disagree with the rhetoric, I think that's the hardest thing about having Labour politicians try and be a version of Reform. It's no one's really buying it. If you want to buy that, you'll buy it from the person that's really selling it. You're not going to get off-brand Farage. You'll just get Farage. He's right there. So what's going on now in the PLP? I know you can't speak for everyone, but there's a lot of...
No, I definitely can't speak for anyone. Probably for under 24 people.
But I guess what's your read? Because you were in the last parliament, and there's all these new people that have got seats. Is it the case that people are just scared because there are such harsh tactics, or is it just now there's just a very right wing set of MPs that maybe don't reflect the party membership? Because we're not seeing the same scale of rebellions, and it's sort of hard to know when you're outside of it, not outside of Westminster. What's going on? Do these MPs think this stuff is good?
I don't believe that everyone thinks it's good. I think that people are definitely uncomfortable with what we're doing, but I think because there's such a hostile kind of narrative from the media, we are also told, look, if you're disagreeing with the government or if we're making the government look bad, it's bad for us overall. We need to provide a united front. And I definitely do agree on certain things. We should provide a united front, but not when they are fundamentally wrong. We all, as individuals and as representatives, have to have some red lines. We, as a government, should have some red lines, and a party should have some red lines. But I think that's it. And also, I wouldn't have said I had many privileges in life, but in terms of when I was elected, as in the cohort of MPs that I came into, and having worked for Diane, I came in at a time when someone like me could be elected. I'm very much able to be myself. I feel like perhaps maybe other MPs, having come in a different way, maybe might have had to either downplay or not necessarily subscribe to a certain type of politics. But I've always been able to be free. Under threat, yes, probably, because I'll probably get in trouble half the time. But I've been able to be free. And I worry that perhaps those that have come in now, again, because of what was said to them as they were getting elected, when they're getting elected, they're very firm, you've got to make sure, that you're you're on the side of the government. We've all got to stand together. You know, we made sure that you won your election, all of those types of things. Maybe they're scared. And you know, when you're a new MP, it's hard to do certain things, to step out on your own. It can be very, very nerve-wracking.
Also, it's, I think, for people who haven't worked in Parliament or, you know, aren't close to it's a very weird system, right? There's no training program. You get like selected by the local Labour Party, or maybe the National Labour Party suggests you get selected. You have this, we never know for sure when there's going to be an election in the UK. So sometimes you're selected and you're like waiting. I don't know when you got selected versus when you actually had to like fight an election.
No, I don't think we were expecting our election. So it was maybe like a month before that, you know, we thought, oh, it's coming. So I was ready to go. And you're right. There is no training program. I mean, again, I don't feel too sorry for everybody. Again, because as I said, I came in having worked for Diane, who has a lot thrown up at her and still managed to stand up to her principles. And here I am doing the same. But I understand why, I don't know, perhaps you might feel exposed if you're going to do something for yourself. Like, I remember I ended up being the only MP that voted completely against the Brexit deal. Some people, or the Brexit transition agreement, again, it's a long story as to why there's a difference, but I remember actually being quite nervous and finding out I was the only one that had done it. I had a couple of colleagues who abstained, but being the only one, you're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do to me now? And all the press were reporting one Labour MP votes against Brexit.
Oh my God. Did you just not know no one was going to vote against?
No, I mean, I thought somebody, obviously, all of the people that were really angry.
Also, there was a lot of Romaniacs. There were a lot of people that were very,
there were a lot of Romaniacs.
There was, like, I remember David Lammy, he was very outraged. There were a lot of people who were like...
abstained.
Yeah.
Some people abstained in quiet anger on the basis, but it was on a basis which I think wasn't right. But my constituency, in terms of how they voted, they were second only to Gibraltar, to wanting to remain in the EU. And obviously Gibraltar has a very good reason. So as far as I was concerned, there was no other position that I could have taken. Even an abstention would not have been enough. Also, I believe this has been bad. What an act of self-harm. And I know we're going about the world now, starting other trade deals, but if you look at it on a graph, it is pittance in comparison, and a really, really prominent reason as to why we're in the cost of living crisis that we are right now.
I mean, you worked with Diane for many years. You know, you're proudly like in her political tradition. But we just had the Port Ovenden thing. So for those who didn't follow, a Labour Party staffer resigned, should have been sacked, about some really like awful misogynist emails or messages about Diane Abbott. And like again and again, you know, we saw it several years ago. Amnesty International did a report about negative abuse that female MPs were experiencing on Twitter, and they said we have to exclude Diane Abbott because she skews the sample. And like that, like you worked for the woman who was the lightning rod for so much racism, so much sexism. Like, how did you? Like, it must be tough experiencing that. Like, how did you leave that experience being like, I want to be in politics? Like, sign me up.
No, I had to question my sanity. No word of a lie. I mean, if my plan was to, I suppose, be the type of MP that I had seen, you have to question your sanity because you know exactly what you're going to get. And I remember my first, well, obviously been abused online more generally, but I tweeted that I was standing. Diane immediately retweeted it, and then I got my first piece of racist, misogynist abuse underneath. And I thought to myself, and all my heart sank a little bit because you're like, now it begins because you've seen it. But then it also comes up to that question again, why not me? Why not me? Why shouldn't I be allowed to do this, especially in my own area, especially when I have worked with a fantastic MP for a number of years who has taught me how best to represent your constituents? Why not me? And why should I essentially run in fear? Because that's what it came down to. When I thought about it deeply, what would the only reason be? And it would be that I'm afraid. And that's not okay.
It's really, it's interesting you say it, because I guess I completely understand the people who go through that same thing and they're like, I don't want to do it. But we're so lucky to have people that still step up and say that they want to, like you. But I have to ask, because you also have some Ghanaian heritage. You've got West Africans in your family.
Yeah.
Did you not get aunties or family members being like, why do you want to do this? There were some people being like, hey.
They were like, yes. Honestly, when I went to Ghana that Christmas, I already had my ticket booked. And I was like, oh my gosh, how long is this election going to go?
Oh yeah, it was a December election, wasn't it?
December election.
You're like, I want to be in the sunshine. Allow this.
And it was just, I wanted to rest. But my dad, who sadly passed last year, we wanted to take on a victory parade, to which everybody was very victor. I mean, you'll know, Ghanaians are very much like, there's somebody who's Ghanaian there. I'm like, okay.
So proud.
They're really, really proud, and they remain proud, and that's nice. That is nice. But yeah, no, I question my sanity. And as for those people that have said all these awful things about Diane, if you believe in hell, I'm sure that's where they're off to. But also, I think that the sweetest thing that I know about all of this is that Diane's made history, and she will be written about. They'll make films about her, and you know, you see already children talking about her during Black History Month and putting her picture up on the wall. And these vile, you know, racist, misogynist pieces of crap, they're just going to be a little footnote. These people are really awful to Diane. Who are they, and where are they now?
Yeah, and I think that's like why it's been hard to see the treatment she's had from the leadership, and we don't need to dwell on it, but because I guess for those of us who are on the left, who are Black, who are like Labour supporters, she's like very much one of our living legends and icons, and like is such like, there's just rightly so much love and so much pride for Diane. Like anytime I went to the Stand Up for Diane rally, or like I saw her speak, I was lucky to see her speak a few weeks ago, and it's just, there's so much love in our community for her and so much respect for what she's done. And I think it just feels so hard to hear. And like, it's just hurtful and upsetting and really enraging that she should have anything other than that from like all parts of the Labour Party. And as you say, like when the history books are written, yeah, they'll be the footnote and she'll be the chapter. But what would you say to Black women on the left who just feel really like sick of Labour because of what they hear about Diane's treatment? And then what we'll end it on is maybe a list of good stuff that this Labour government's done. But before we get to that, like what would you say to other Black women who are just like, I don't like Labour, like they don't treat Diane well enough?
I would say that Diane is still here. She's still a member of the Labour Party, and she's made clear that she has no intentions of leaving. And if she's willing to stay and fight for this space, then so should we, because she's gone through a lot to make sure that we are able to be here. And I suppose that goes the same for anybody who may feel put out by some of the some of the treatment of other MPs who, just because of the policies they voted for, just remember that there are people within the party that continue to fight for those policies. And that doesn't mean you don't have a place in the Labour Party. If you look at public opinion, you'll see that you very much do.
Thanks for that. Okay, and so to end on a positive note, because we've been quite honest about what's not great about Labour, what's on your list then? Maybe it's a shorter list than your Labour, but like what's on your list of stuff that you're like, this is stuff that this Labour government has done that makes me feel like, yeah, I'm proud to be a Labour MP?
I think the Employment Rights Bill has been good. I'm looking at the extension of free school meals, breakfast clubs. I think that's really, really, really important. That these types of things, we are doing them. And actually, even some of our local, I'm thinking about the Mayor of London and free school meals again. And obviously now there's a move towards people being allowed to build. I think we need to watch that a little bit more because of what might happen. But I am really encouraged by the idea that we are looking more at building social housing, understanding that at its core, people need a home, and that will ultimately solve a lot of the other societal problems that we have. So yeah, things like that.
Hi friends, I wanted to say a big thank you for listening and being part of the Over Under community. As you know, the show's going through a transition. I'm now hosting without Gary. It's a big change, but it's also a chance to sharpen our focus, dig more into current affairs with a clear left perspective, and independent of mainstream media. Producing the show takes time, research, and resources. Right now, we're able to keep making it thanks to a few hundred generous contributors who make a gift via Patreon. I want to say a big thank you this week to Jason Saul, who doubled their contribution If you support the show on Patreon, you get a bonus episode, the chance to submit questions for guests, and access to the Over Under WhatsApp community, which is very lively and fun. Even a few pounds a month makes a huge difference. You can support the show at patreon.com/overthetop under the radar. Thank you. What does this moment feel like, especially as a Black Londoner? Like for me, just having 100,000 people turn up to a Tommy Robinson rally in London, like it just, I don't know, it felt pretty grim. How did you see it? And like, do you think that what do you feel about the rise of the far right at the moment?
Well, someone asked, thinking of London specifically, someone asked a really interesting question. They were like, so I know loads of people came from elsewhere, but how many do you think were actually Londoners? And the reality of the situation is a lot of them would have been Londoners, which is so strange for our city. And I'm concerned about the rise of reform, or actually the rise in right-wing politics generally. There's something very inhumane about it. It doesn't go along with our natural instincts as human beings. And I know obviously we live in a world in which there's a lot of discrimination, but actually generally at its core, I believe that people are good. They don't want to do harm to their neighbour. But here they are at the moment, seeing that there's something wrong in our country and being very happy to point their fingers at somebody else, not with any evidence, I might add, just because somebody has repeated it to them again and again and again. And it's terrible because this type of politics it's not the first time we've seen it surface in this world. It's often led to really, really disastrous consequences where a government fails, and governments are failing right across the world, where the cost of living is hard, where people feel hard done by, and their first reaction is to gather a group of people, point at them, and it's usually migrants, usually people who are othered, and say they are the ones to blame, not the people like myself who are politicians. We effectively are the ones that make the decision. And the reason why we are in some of the difficulty we are finding, well, actually, no, a lot of the difficulty we are financially, I'm sorry, but we cannot blame all of it on the pandemic. We just can't. The reality of that situation is because of the decisions that politicians make. And this is why people are angry at us. And this is why they're turning to what feels like an anti-politician movement. Unfortunately, it is an extremely racist one. And I know that not everybody on those marches at their core would have been racist. Some of them are just generally concerned about the country. Some of them were Black people.
Yeah, saw that.
But you know what? We have to be worried about the fact that even though they may not at their core be racist, they didn't think it was a problem to go on a march that was obviously racist.
Yeah, I kind of, we had someone from Hope Not Hate on to talk about the rally, and he was there. Like, I think it's not, for me, it's more just that like Tommy Robinson was fronting the rally, and you don't have to do a lot of digging on Tommy Robinson to know what he stands for. He's been in our politics for a long time.
He's been in jail.
He's fresh out of jail before he did that demo. And it's like Elon Musk paying his legal fees. So I think for me, it's hard to like, I accept that you don't know the politics of everyone on the demo. But when the demo is led by Tommy Robinson, and when some of the speakers are like just a circus of far right people from France, America, Netherlands, like, and when they're saying things about repatriation, it's like, I think we can't be, I think it's a bit of a cop out to be like, oh, but you never know what everyone on the demo. It's like, yeah, but this is just a sniff test of like, they definitely don't have a problem with what Tommy Robinson's saying.
Which is that's not okay.
It's not okay. And do you think like, it's interesting you made that point about almost definitely there would have been Londoners on that march. And it's kind of a comfort blanket for us, isn't it? To maybe pretend everyone's like in London is like coming in on a bus. What have you noticed that in your constituency? Because you represent like a fairly diverse, like you said, like fairly progressive constituency in London. Are you noticing that shift there, or is it still something that like you're a bit immune to?
I haven't noticed it in my constituency, but we had some weird incident in another part of London where we heard that there were people that were training, like they're training for a future race war, like a group of guys on a park, crazy thing like that. But you know, the scariest thing I've heard in recent months is the increase in children having to be suspended from school for racism. our children who are on most issues, including race, the most progressive of us are absorbing this so much that they are going to school and engaging in racist behavior to the extent that they'll be suspended. That is a problem. That's when you know there's no money trickling down, but that's definitely trickling down.
I want to talk as well about the way that because there's the far right and there's definitely this surge in, maybe some of it's fueled by social media, some of it, Hope Not Hate Are Clear, is also fueled by mainstream media. But I want to talk as well just about the absolute wildness that is happening in mainstream politics. Like we're recording the week of Tory Party conference. And these, so we've just, Britian, Kemi's Britian, could not have enjoyed that flopping more. But I think like the thing that I wanted to talk to you about that came out this week was this leaked recording of Robert Jenrick, who's just, started out as like a David Cameron supporter and has been reinvented as I don't know what, talking about being in an area of Birmingham and not seeing a single white face. I really would like to fact check that. Don't believe him at all.
Like, of course we don't. It's not true.
Is that true? He just said it.
Come on.
But like, I
wonder, in a more diverse area.
Yeah, maybe there weren't as many white faces as made him comfortable, but I really doubt he actually didn't see a white face. Presumably he was also there with a staffer who, let's be real, was white. But like just to, it's got a bit of coverage and it's like one of these scandals. But I think what I want to switch about, because it just feels like what is acceptable for, there's, we have this increased visibility of the far right. And then we also just have across the political spectrum, this absorption of things that feel pretty far right and then being said by mainstream politicians. Like so just for context that people don't know, I'm sure everyone's seen it. Robert Jenrick was recorded at an event with donors and the recording leaked this week. He talks about being in an area of Birmingham, not seeing a single white face. And then he says, I just want the country to be integrated. But it feels like what he's actually saying is, I don't want to go through a part of the UK and not see a white person. And like, let's be clear, he's not going to Surrey and being like, why are there no black and brown faces? Why aren't we integrated? Like, it felt like, I don't know if you call it a dog whistle but like, it felt like a pretty clear sort of barb and dig. He also referred to the area as like a slum, which again felt pretty loaded. Do you think there is a shift now that it's acceptable to say things that, 10 years ago might have been unacceptable for like Kemi's defended him that he's not going to get sacked, he's not going to resign.
No, he's not. I mean, and that's it. You're right. These are the type of people would say stuff like that 10 years ago. They would say it in here in Westminster. It wouldn't necessarily make it on national television and then just be shrugged off, but they were definitely saying it. I remember actually getting into argument with another Tory staffer who was also calling parts of Birmingham, like ghettos and only, and he had just been talking about having his parents buy him a flat in Chelsea, and I was like, well, what makes them ghettos? And he's like, well, because it's just all one community living together. And I was like, so isn't Chelsea the same?
Chelsea, I mean, by that, Chelsea definitely meets the definition of a ghetto.
He said, no, it's not the same thing. And I was like, well, that's your definition of a ghetto. That's what your definition of a ghetto was. But I got pulled out that argument. So yeah, people said things like that. The other thing that people seem to be obsessed with, now I go about and I don't hear English being spoken anymore. And that one has always really got me. Or I got on the bus and there were so many people and they weren't speaking English. Firstly, why have you not got your headphones in your ears minding your own business? Why do you want to listen to somebody else's conversation? I cannot understand. And actually, if you're in London in particular, you might have somebody coming to tour our wonderful city. And, they feed into the economy. But also, what is wrong with people speaking other languages? Do you know what one of the biggest problems that people cite with British people going abroad? That we don't speak other people's languages. I thought it made us more worldly people. And I genuinely do not believe that people just coming to this country and taking jobs as well without speaking other languages. This kind of racist rhetoric that has to be untrue, but it's also kind of nosy. It's just ridiculous.
It doesn't curl over, does it? Because it's like no one could function in it. Like there's so few areas of life in the UK where you'd be able to function if you didn't have English.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying there aren't people in the UK where they don't have great English, but the reality is you couldn't work in most workplaces because, as you say, we don't speak second languages. We all only speak English. So it's like, Yeah, it's. I like the nosy point though of just like mind your business. It really is not your business what language people are talking.
And I got on the bus and I was like, what's the problem?
But you're right. I think there's an interesting point because there isn't. We can easily get into this thing of saying something terrible is happening that never existed before. But you're right. People did say sketchy, racist, dog whistly things about black and brown areas before this.
Now it's mainstream.
Yeah, now it's mainstream and now it's kind of co-signed by people like Kemi, right? There's no sense of like, he said something wrong. They're like, oh, it's out of context. Or like, oh, well, people got to integrate. And I just like, I don't know what... It just feels like sometimes we're having two conversations. There's like the official conversation and then there's a conversation that black and brown people know is actually being had. Because when someone said they didn't see a single white face, there's an implication they've got a problem with that. And you can say, oh, I just want integration. But like certainly like, we both have Ghanaian heritage. Like Ghanaians speak English. The official language in Ghana is English. Ghanaians speak other languages too, but it's like you couldn't have a more. Ghanaians tend to be Christian. So like in terms of we're both from a community that is pretty integrated on most measures of what people say they want from ethnic minority communities, like people from West African countries, because of colonialism, we integrate pretty well. We still, in Ghana, people, like, until the 60s, people were driving on the same side of the road.
And the worst thing, they'll be talking about migrants. Yeah, they were talking about migrants, and they'll be thinking that you must be talking about someone else because you couldn't be talking about them. They speak the Queen's English. Who are you talking about?
Often more, like, Ghanaians often speak more proper English than like
formal.
I do.
Very, very formal.
Very formal British English. But then it's like, so that's when you know it's kind of nonsense because... I'm sure for your family and definitely for my father, like it wasn't that they came to this country and everyone was like, welcome. You speak English, you're integrated, you come from a Christian country. Like that's not the reality. And it just feels like the thing that isn't being said, but that all of us hear is that like black and brown people can't be British. Now you've told me that you and Diane have got these offices next to each other and you're always popping in. I kind of feel like you guys need a podcast or something. I just feel like I want a day in the life of you guys in Parliament.
That'd be so funny, although I'm not sure if we should share our conversations. They're very frank.
I do love that. Yeah, I love that. I just have the image of you being like, Diane, was it always like this? And her being like, yep, or being like, nope. Okay, well, you've been absolutely a ray of sunshine for us today, Belle. And I wanted to say that there were so many questions for you. We haven't got through all of them. There's also so much love and solidarity for you. And I think, lots of Over-Under listeners are in Labour, have left Labour, supporting, Greens or the new party. But there was just a unanimous love and respect for you and what you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You definitely sort of keep me going.
Oh, thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to Over the Top, Under the Radar. You can follow us on social media at over_under_pod_, and please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed the show and you want to support us to help us keep recording, please go to patreon.com/overthetop_under the radar.